All right, we're back. We're back, everyone. Welcome to Fantasy Labs. Oh man, that was the most exciting thing I've ever been on the show. The most animated I've been.
We're coming at you live from Fantasy Labs.
Oh boy.
You had that Sunday morning shock jock vibe coming in there, Jeremy.
Did I? Oh, I'm sorry.
I enjoy it quite a bit, actually. It's fine. You don't apologize to me.
Well, okay, then never mind.
Welcome back, guys. Circle of Eyes, Jeremy, is what we're talking about right now.
Well, this is something I talked to Pete about very briefly before the show. This is like a kind of pseudo segment that I want to have on the show, which I'm calling Design Insights. So Pete and I make a lot of content for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, and we make a lot of that kind of behind the scenes, and then we share it with you guys once we get it to a good spot. And one of the things that I know happens to me, I'm sure happens to you, Pete, and I am almost positive must happen to chat, unless chat are somehow way better at this than me, which, maybe you guys are just way better at this than me, I don't know, is sometimes I get to a point on a project where it's coming along, there are things I really, really like about it, and I hit a wall and just cannot for the life of me in a way that is satisfactory and move it forward. Do you get that, Pete?
Yes. Well, I think you know this guy. I have one too, that I kind of finished and I looked at it and I don't know what I would do to it, but I just kind of was underwhelmed with my finished product.
Yeah, and I think that's something that as a creator, as someone who makes content for 5th edition D&D, you have to know and figure out how to deal with that. And right off the bat, like the number one thing, and I think it's something that instinctively we always want to do, is put it away and come back to it. Pete, how do you feel about that kind of like that concept? Do you do that often? And if so, do you find that like actually helps you to come to a successful product in the end?
Yes and no.
I think that's exactly how I kind of felt.
I think that putting it away and coming back to a half-finished thing actually is more difficult because you don't have that initial inspiration and vision for the overall project that you have. But so I kind of firmly believe if I'm going to finish something, I like to just like have a completed thing. I like to try and get through it so I have a product, even if it's kind of a subpar product, and then coming back to it later and maybe making changes and figuring out where it's weak is a little bit easier. That's my rough take on that.
I totally agree. I mean, I think when you're working on a project and you get to a point where you just kind of stall out, it's super important to just make something, even if that something isn't what makes you happy, even if it's not the thing you want in the end, and it's not what you want, and you don't know what you want is, just do it. And then when you come back to it later and there is a finished product, it's a little easier to do those constructive revisions. So this is kind of a tiny pencil says sort of the opposite. Sometimes I have to step away and let that spark come back. Yeah, well, it's kind of exactly what we're talking about, tiny pencil, right? You do take some time away from it, but before you totally step away from it, have something there to come back to. Right. In this case, the case study here with the Circle of Eyes Druid is a Druid circle, and like I was talking about a minute ago in the Lich's Lair with V-Bunny, this is my kind of 2-sentence description of what I want to accomplish with this Druid. And I've been doing this. I did this with my most recent Warlock circle for the Great Tree, and I did this again with the Druid circle. I started by writing these 2 sentences. And for this one, assume otherworldly forms, grasp the maddening reality of the far realm, and stare into the eyes of infinity. Channel the otherworldly essence of the void beyond the stars with the subclass option for the Druid and 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Cool. It's a tagline, it's a sales line, but that's what I want to accomplish, right?
Hey, Jeremy, you did. It's very cool. Also, welcome, Palance, the baby of Ollie, and thank you for the follow.
Oh, delicious tea. Welcome. Oh, yeah, and thank you for the follow. I hope our follow thing is working. Guys, is it working?
It went up.
you may not know this, but both of you have just made a great contribution to our very first Monster Mash, which once we reach that 25 new follower goal, we're going to do a special segment on here where we create an I guess maybe not an apex predator, but we're going to create the natural predator to a random monster kind of selected by chat. It's going to be a very exciting little creative experience. So thanks for the follow, folks.
Yeah, thank you, guys. So Jeremy, do you want to start bringing us through your flavor text on your Circle of Eyes?
Yeah, so moving through the actual circle here, my core concept for the Circle of Eyes. Druids of the Circle of Eyes commune with the void beyond the stars, and they who dwell within it. They gather to enact complex rituals to observe this infinite realm, seeking to explore the inscrutable reality beyond the stars and to understand the forms of alien beings that exist there. Druids of the Circle have a complex relationship with other druids, many of which believe that the otherworldly influence corrupts the natural order of the world. Druid of Circle of Eyes, however, believe that alien life plays a crucial role in the greater cosmic natural order, and that aberrant influence is not, in and of itself, unnatural. Many druids of the Circle keep their otherworldly fascination secret, wishing to avoid contention with those who would reject their exploration of the unknown. So,
awesome.
I think... Yeah, right off the bat, I think this is definitely exciting, right? There's so much direction here. And let's be real, this is my tentacle arms druid, right? This is what I want. And so, there's some stuff here. You learn deep speech, you get some cool spells. They're great and all, whatever. I'm not going to worry about those.
Give me maddening forms, though.
Maddening forms, this is the crux, this is the core thing, and that is starting at second level, your observations of the otherworldly have taught you to magically transform your body, mimicking alien forms. As an action, you can expend the use of your wild shape to alter your body, choosing a feature from the list of otherworldly transformations, and gaining its benefits. When you use this feature, you gain a number of temporary hit points equal to your druid level. The transformation lasts for 10 minutes or until you end it early by using a bonus action on your turn. The transformation ends early if you fall unconscious, drop to 0 hit points, or die. So, and then I have at the bottom, otherworldly transformations. I designed these very much like the Eldritch Invocations, and they're kind of what you expect, right? One is arms of the slimy ones.
Oh, dumb.
Your arms transform into lengthy slime-lathered tentacles. And, has some cool features to it. Eyes of the Infinite. Your eyes rapidly divide and spread over much of your face, becoming hundreds of glaring pupils prying into space and time around you. Flesh of the Worm Lords. The surface of your body suddenly rises and ripples, betraying the massive worms now within it. Right.
You'd mentioned some of the names of these, but I forgot about a lot of them, and I love how you named these. Like, you didn't just go with Eye of the Beholder. I Eyes of the Infinite, Mind of the Thought Drinkers instead of Brain. I
really wanted to these are not named things, right? These are abstract beings of the far realm. Gasp of the wheezing woe. With an abrupt hiccup, your throat inflates outward in a transparent, bulbous, frog-like sack. Right? Legs of the Blade Walkers. Chitinous blade-like legs erupt outward from your back. Mind of the Thought Drinkers. Your skull rapidly swells upwards and outwards, making room for expanded psionic faculties. 6 core concepts.
Do you pick these, or can you do any one of them anytime you use it?
Any of them.
Cool.
And the core thing about these features is I tied each of them to a cantrip, and each of these affect a cantrip in some way. So Arms of Slimy Ones, you can use your tentacles to enhance your Thorn Whip cantrip, which you can do with your tentacles. You can whip people with tentacles and grapple them. Eyes of the Infinite affects your resistance cantrip, letting you cast it as a reaction as you peer into the future slightly. Which I really like that one. Flesh of the Worm Lords is the infestation cantrip. When creatures end their turn next to you, they are infested by the worms, and they get the cantrip. You cast the cantrip on them automatically. Gasp of the Wheezing Woe is poison spray. You can pick up gas at people. Legs of the Blade Walkers is primal savagery. You can use the chitinous legs as a weapon. And Mind of the Thought Drinkers, you can cast Thunderclap into the psionic space to damage people. I'm not going to go into all of the nitpick detail about them, but this was my core concept for this class, is making a aberrant druid with a super focus on these specialized uses for cantrips, making these cantrips very special. And when I got through here and I made all of these, I thought all my work was done. And then I got to 6th level and I said, what the hell goes at 6th level? And I had no idea. And I looked at all the other druids and what the other druids got, and they all get radically different things. And for the most part, none of them are really very powerful. And they're just weird. And they're all different. And then some of them, like Shepherd and Moon, both of them make their damage become magical, but then Shepherd's also gives 10 hit points randomly. I was just so confused and kind of befuddled as what to do with these, and I didn't know where to go. I knew what I wanted to do at 10th level. I wanted this weird understanding feature to represent your knowledge of aberrations, and so I added some text in here, right? When you reach 10th level, you can't be charmed or frightened by aberrations. And whenever you make an intelligence or knowledge check on an aberrant creature, you're considered to be proficient, and you can add double your proficiency bonus. Kind of like stone cunning from the dwarves, but for aberrations.
But for the far realms.
Yeah, and so then I just didn't know. I didn't know what I wanted to do at 6th level. And so what I did is I just threw something together. I had an idea what I wanted to do at 14th level. I wanted it to be a way that you could like tear a void into rip in reality with the far realm. I didn't bother to write that out because I wasn't too concerned about that. But I made this feature at 6th level. And I went back to that first statement and I said, well, I haven't done anything with grasping the maddening reality of the far realm. And so I made this feature called Visions from Beyond the Stars, which gets you, starting at 6th level, you can peer into the void and experience hazy otherworldly premonitions, and you gain a premonition die, and you can use that to enhance your attack rolls, ability checks, and saving throws. And when you do that, you have to roll a save or become maddened, gaining a short-term madness effect for 1 round. I didn't like the execution of that, but it kind of worked. And so I made it. I just made this little feature, and I let it sit for a while, not really satisfied with it. And when I came back to this feature after some time, I looked it all over and I said, what is this subclass all about? And I thought, well, it's about the transformations. And so that's that kind of inspired me. Well, why isn't the 6th level feature emphasizing my transformations? And that's where I came up with this new 6th level feature, Aberrant Transfiguration. And I guess, and that's kind of where I stuck on it, right? It allows you to use your wild shape feature and also use your maddening forms feature at the same time. So you can become a bear with tentacle arms, or an eagle with, horrible chitinous legs, or whatever the hell you want. And
that's really fun, it sounds like.
Yeah, I thought so. Or you could become a frog. I guess a frog with a bulbous frog thing. That almost makes sense, actually.
That one makes sense, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's bigger than usual.
But I guess my point is, the takeaway of what I was trying to get across with this whole discussion, right, and this whole kind of rant, is just sometimes you got to just make a feature that, works, but you're just not happy with. And I spent a lot of time making this feature that I wasn't happy with. I knew I wasn't going to be happy with, just so that you can find the thing you do want. Do you ever do that, Pete?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Hundo percent.
Okay.
I've made. Jeremy, I'll just say though, I do love this, man. This one's.
I like this as well.
In particularly your little cantrip invocations.
Yeah, I was that was a design concept that along this line, right? I hit a wall here. The last time I made this, I worked on this. I finished all of these guys on the 7th of July. I was done with these otherworldly transformations. It's been 20 days, and I've been looking at this every day, trying to work through it. It's taken me 20 days to finally get this Aberrant Transfiguration feature.
I once made a. Oh, Fern, Jeremy.
This Fern.
Yeah, Fern from
Yeah.
Delves. Um, and I've made a druid where I wanted to basically transform into kind of like these creepy, aberrant things. And this would be a direction I would much rather go than say, what I was doing, which was reflavoring Moon Druid Beast. Frosty Pirate says, I think this is a very cool design. I don't think of this as something Wizards of the Coast would ever publish for one of their settings. It could be great in some other games, but I couldn't see this in Forgotten Realms or Eberron, etc. I do think you succeeded in your mission for what you wanted to make here.
Well, thank you, Frosty.
I think that's
that.
I think that's a fair statement. Yeah, this isn't necessarily like something.
Well, maybe in Planescape they'd publish.
Planescape might publish this. I think the extra detail on the like how much larger the otherworldly transformations are, I can see that being something that Wizards would likely not put that much detail in.
There's a lot.
But it seems very fun to play with too, if you're into it, which I could definitely get into this. I really like this design, Jeremy.
Yeah, I do as well. And again, the thing that married me to this project is, like, if this were another project, I had another Druid circle from way back called the Circle of the Scarlet Moon. And the whole point of it was a lycanthropy-driven druid. And I wanted it to be a martial druid, and I got it pretty good. I got, like, pretty far along on it. And I kept hitting this wall where I was like, yeah, but, like, how do I make this really special, right? And I think the conclusion I finally came to it was there isn't anything about this that is good enough or like important enough for me to put the effort in to keep making. And so like sometimes kind of the design takeaway is just let it die, right? Just if you can't make it, don't make it, right? Or share it with someone else and maybe they can make something cool of it. But in this case, I loved the cantrip tie-in concept so much I refused. I refused to let this one die.
Yeah, make one for them, make one for you. And I mean, like I said, I think it's a really cool. It's a really cool thing with the cantrip concept, especially for ones like resistance and primal savagery, and like honestly, a lot of the druid cantrips are weak. So having a reason to get excited about those cantrips is cool too.
That's exactly my point. Like, if you can, in your subclass, take a spell or an ability or if you could make a bard that makes Song of Rest your core feature and makes it feel awesome, or Font of Inspiration. I don't even know what Font of Inspiration does. But if you could find a way to make that a really awesome, cool core feature, that's going to be a great bard subclass. Immediately, it's going to be awesome. Just because it takes this feature that isn't fun for most people and makes it really fun. You know?
Yes. Yes, I do. Jeremy, do you want to take a quick look at my face spirit before we go? I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but
I just wanted to, before we get off this, I just want to say for the chat, this because it's great comments coming in from chat. Tiny Pencil is saying maybe a floating eye killing flank and surprise rounds for 6th level. Yeah, I definitely could have made like an arcane eye. I actually had something like that, Tiny Pencil. So bright minds think alike. I had that before I had Visions from the Beyond the Stars. That was my first round, and I just wasn't super feeling it. It was too on the nose for me. And then Palance, the Baby Anvil. It's not Baby Anvil. I'm sorry. Palance, the Baby of Avali, was saying that they're mapping stuff for their homebrew world the last few days. That's awesome. I am so terrible at maps. I've tried software. I've tried actually just drawing. Oh my God. Have you ever tried really mapping? I know you've tried mapping, Pete, actually. You've done a pretty good job on like Roll20 with it.
Yeah, I can make a decent Roll20 map. I've made a couple of maps. I've drawn a couple that I've liked. But I don't know. It's like, for me, a lot of the time it comes down to not having time to put in like the amount of it's deciding on the amount of detail is the big thing for me, because a lot of the times, I'll make a map with a lot of detail when really I just want to say that you have to go through woods. You have to go through woods to get from this town to the next one is the only information I actually cared about conveying, and then I'll end up, I don't know. I tend to get lost when I make maps, is I guess the bottom line.
Yeah. Yeah. What's interesting is, before I want to move on to Face Spirit, but that I actually have a specific character in mind for this Aberrations Druid.
Who?
It's have you watched Netflix Castlevania?
Yes.
It's the priest.
Oh, interesting.
That was like the kind of vibe I wanted, but then with like tentacles and transformations and stuff.
You mean the Forge Master, Isaac?
No, not Isaac. No, oh man, Isaac's way cooler. I love Isaac.
Isaac is really cool.
I meant like the crazy priest who had like the kind of the.
Oh, in the most recent season.
Yeah.
Basically the main villain of the most recent season.
I mean, you could call him that, sure.
Yeah, I guess he's not exactly, but regardless, anyway, I know who you're talking about. Yeah, I mean...
that was kind of like the vibe I thought of for this. Just like a weird, kind of out there, but also strangely chill, but like intimidatingly chill kind of weirdo.
He's definitely intimidating.
That was the character I had in mind for this Druid.
That's a cool character. He's a great... that was one when I was watching. Whenever I watch media, I always think about different characters that I see as D&D characters. And he's one I did not consider when watching, but he would make a great D&D character.
Oh, yeah. He'd be so hard to play, though. Anyway, I don't mean to get distracted. We're going to move over to the Spirits, the Fey Spirit Sorcerer subclass. And for those interested, stuff like this Druid Circle that we showed here, Great Tree Warlock we showed before, the Fey Spirit we're about to show, this is all eventually going to be released free on our website. We're not really doing the DMs Guild thing anymore because it doesn't make a lot of sense for us. We're just going to release this stuff for free so you guys can play it and can give us feedback and can enjoy it and share it with people. So keep your eyes peeled.
I haven't moved over to Jeremy's lovely new formatting yet, so I'm still on our previous, slightly outdated now format, but still looks good. So this is the Sorcerer Surgeon Fey Spirit. I made this as a part of a 1-hour homebrew challenge that I did with Jeremy. And since then, I have touched it up and kind of, quote unquote, completed it. And it's in a position where I think it is...
Oh, you gave it quirks!
Well, I gave it quirks, but here's the first thing I want to talk about was these quirks, which I really wanted to give them quirks, but I didn't really come up with quirks that I liked. And it ended up being that I was just kind of forcing quirks.
Pete, do you want to read the Fey Spirit description?
Yeah, let me read the description of it because I think that's important. Your innate magic is drawn from the energies of the Feywild, a plane of magic and emotion where the fairy courts of the Seelie and Unseelie hold dominion. This sorcerous spark may have awakened within you after finding yourself lost in the Feywild's verdant woodlands or after being subjected to the magic of a powerful archfey. Fey magic is ancient and wild, and those that wield its power find that it can manifest within them differently with each passing moment. At your option, you can pick from or roll on one of the Seelie or Unseelie quirk tables whenever you complete a long rest, gaining that quirk until your next long rest. Alternatively, you may choose a quirk from each table to gain permanently. So I had this thinking. The core mechanic of this class is that it switches back and forth between Seelie and Unseelie, and you have basically two power sets that you're alternating between when you play this sorcerer subclass. So I thought I'd have different quirks for when you're using each power set to like convey that in your character and how those magic changes in you. But it just didn't pan the way I want. Here's a couple of examples. So here's a couple of examples of Seelie quirks. Tell me if you maybe you like these, and I'm overthinking it, Until today, you never realized how fragrant the flowers are, how warm the sun is, or how soft the grass. Another one, upon awakening, your hair or skin becomes a vibrant color of your choosing based on your current mood. A third one, you want to learn everything you can about the next person you meet. So I made all of these quirks just something like, oh, today when you woke up, you're just in a bright mood, and you You see the world through rose-tinted goggles, and everything's kind of, that's sort of the vibe. You're bringing that kind of good Fae energy. And then for the unseelie quirks, it's a little bit darker. Like food and drink grows icy cold in your touch. A road is a trap, and you won't walk on one if you can avoid it. So I was going for this kind of like almost paranoia, and like staying and hiding in the woods was the idea I got. Do you like these at all?
It's interesting because I think you're going in the wrong. So actually, here's the first question, Pete. This design insight, right? This is all about, you've created these things that work, right? Like these quirks work, but you're not happy with them as they would apply to your class, right? Or to your subclass.
A little bit, yeah.
I think the problem here is how you're looking at the quirks, because a quirk is inherently something that like you want to role play and that you want to discover over time with characters. Like a great example is on the Shadow Sorcerer. They have a quirk which is your heart barely beats. That's effectively what it is, right? Like once a minute, once every so often it'll beat, and when it does, it might surprise you, right? That's one of the quirks a Shadow Sorcerer gets, or could get. And I think that's the kind of thing that, as a Shadow Sorcerer, will come up eventually as like part of that character. Because of the fickle nature of these, and some of these quirks are like that. And I think that's the problem, is some of them are too, this would take some time to explore and come to, rather than this is my attitude and how I'm acting, which is, I think, what you want, right?
Yeah, well, I was kind of in a place where I was thinking I didn't want all of them to be like that, because like there's also, I think, something that's a little bit tiring as a player. So like, here's what it comes down to is I was building this thing and I thought, yeah, but I don't really want to do this every day necessarily. So then I put the qualifier on it that you can just pick one that you use all the time rather than this do it all the time system. And so then I compromised the original vision.
Pete, if you were going to play this, how would you want to do this?
That's a great question. The answer is every day I would just pick a thing.
Do that.
That's what I would do.
That's the problem. You've hit this point where you're compromising your vision a little bit. Like, here's a silly quirk that's not on here that I think works great. And that could be, you assume the best in everyone. Even the most vile enemies that are attacking you probably have a good reason, right? Might be a cool idea. Like, maybe that's not the best way to phrase that, but I think that works.
It's in there.
Right?
Oh wait, Jeremy, I already wrote that one. Weird. You didn't read that the first time?
Well, instead of enemies, maybe it's vile ogre.
It's also better.
I think ogre works.
I like those little flavor points. Anyway, so this is the first thing that I was coming into on this, was the flavor on these quirks were something that wasn't quite working for me. And the system, I think at its core, the problem is that I think that the idea of choosing a different quirk every day is too much. I just think it's too much.
Yeah, it might be. I don't know. But like at the same time, I'm playing with a player right now, one of my games, who's playing an Eladrin. And they aren't doing it every day, but what they're doing is, as the real life seasons change, they're going with the Eladrin seasons for their character. And they're totally, adjusting that personality with its kind of core through line of kind of the Yaskier kind of, hey, my party's really great, everyone, look at my friends, they're awesome, kind of like as the core through line to it, but then with like the aggression of the summer court and the loyalty of the summer court and all the other shenanigans.
My friends will kick your ass.
Yeah, right. Like, how dare you not offer them drinks?
And
right,
and for sure, I think Frosty Part summed it up. The Fae are fickle, and that's what I wanted to convey in this, is that the Fae are, just very fickle beings, but I just don't know if this is fun to use as it stands.
Hey, Pete?
Yeah.
You want to stick that fickle in there? number 4 is you assume the best in everyone, even the most vile ogre attacking you. Even the most vile ogre might have a good reason for attacking you. Number 4 on the other one should be you assume the worst in everyone. Right? Like,
yeah, I was also considering doing like a perfect parallel on all of them.
That would be like, I think, a good way of keeping that fickleness.
Maybe that's a direction to go. Maybe that's let's move on.
Because that would also support the role play design of like exploring the concepts over time, just because they flip flop.
Let's look at the next feature here, because I also would very much like to hear some opinions from both you and chat on what they think of this design. This was the core thing that I did with this class, which was this dual nature. And this is this first feature of Twin Courts, which is beginning at first level, you can let either the Seelie or Unseelie magic seep into your Sorcerer power. Whenever you finish a long rest, you get to choose the influence of either the Unseelie or the Seelie Fae. You gain all the benefits of that court that are available to you until the end of your next long rest. Beginning at 18th level, you can expend 2 sorcery points to switch back and forth at will. So at the capstone of this, of this feature, you have mastery over this now, which I do like that.
That's very cool.
So,
I would even offer maybe do that earlier. The
14th level thing. I was considering it, but I felt like it was almost too good in the context of what they get at 14th level. That's where I had it originally, but we'll see when we get there.
Yeah.
First level, you gain some spells, and then once per long rest, you get to cast one of the spells, and you get different spells depending on which court you are currently associated with. So if you were on the Seelie court, you get, spells that are more kind of whimsical and illusion-y and deceptive, and on the Unseelie court, you get spells that are more just evil and power, is the idea.
Mm-hmm.
I went with this naming
more
convention.
Malicious.
I like the naming convention. I did Mirth and Malice for that. The next other thing that you get at first level is called Wits and Will, which for the Seelie you get advantage on charms. Unseelie you get advantage on being frightened. I like the naming convention there. And so the next question I have, actually, let's look at the 14th level, skip to that. Wander and Watch. This is Seelie. You gain the delicate wings of a fairy, granting you a flying speed of 30 feet. Additionally, you can cast the Enlarge Reduce spell at will, targeting yourself. Unseelie, you gain the keen eyes of a witch, granting you blind sight out to a range of 60 feet. Additionally, you can cast the Detect Magic spell at will. So you either have, the wings and whimsical kind of movement of a fairy. You can shrink down and get into small paces, or get big and do whatever you want to do big. Or you gain the keen eyes of a witch. Anyway, I think both of those work. Manifest through physical transformation. I like that feature a lot. What I'm interested in is the way that this is all ranged. Is it clear to you how this works?
Yeah. No, I totally get it. I completely follow this.
Okay, if you read Wits and Will as it's written here, would you think that you only get it if you picked the Seelie thing and you don't get both of those things? Like, is that okay way to phrase it?
So here's how I understand it, and maybe I don't. Whenever you get a long rest, right, whenever you finish a long rest, you pick Seelie or Unseelie.
Yep.
So if you pick Seelie, you get the Seelie spells.
Yep.
You get the Seelie benefit of Wits and Will.
Yep.
You get the Summer Queen's Invitation benefit of Twilight Vigil.
Actually, you get both of those, and that's one of the things I wanted to ask questions if that was clear on. So
interesting. I was confused. I was going to say you probably want to be clearer on that because it doesn't seem...
Yeah, I made the Seelie and Unseelie thing everywhere, and I wanted to give it that. So let's look at Twilight Vigil really quick.
Sure.
Beginning at 6th level, at dusk and dawn and dusk, you can spend 10 minutes in focus communing with Fey spirits to perform one of the following rites. You can learn if there are any Fey crossings within 1 mile of you, and if so, their direction, but not precise location. And Winter Queen's Refuge. You create a 10-foot radius circle on the ground around you, which lasts for 8 hours. You may treat this area as if it were a space created by the magic circle spell targeting Fey. I like both of these features, but what that did, and the kind of the issue I'm having in the design here, is I made a lot of design choices that were. I think that's one of the more flavorful ones. I made a lot of design choices that were just something to give them, not because it really conveyed the idea of this duality, not because it it lent itself to communicating the flavor of the class, and just because I needed to give them something.
Well, I don't know, man. Like, I think that the Wits and Will definitely supports that kind of duality. I think the spells definitely do. I think Wander and Watch really do, frankly.
Fey Communion, and I think the second half of Mirth and Malice, for example, one of the things on Mirth and Malice is once per long rest, you can cast a spell from your current influencing courts list without expending a spell slot. So I just gave them a spell to cast once a day because I wanted them to have a little bit more power, because at 6th level, they essentially get a lot of flavor. And so I wanted that to scale a little bit.
I was going to say, I think the Fey Crossings thing actually, I think there's actually a potential playability issue there.
How so?
When you're invoking things like Fey Crossings, there are certain assumptions you're making about a setting or a world. Like, this might not matter in an entire setting, and in many settings. Like, you could play in the Forgotten Realms, and this really just is not a thing. Unless the DM has gone out of their way to make it a thing.
Here's why I think it's okay. Yes, absolutely. Here's why I think it's okay, and hear me out on this. One, if you're playing a Fey Spirit Sorcerer, there's a contention that there is like a Feywild in your world, presumably.
Yes, but like the existence of a Fey crossing.
And the idea of a Fey crossing is reinforced by wizards in a couple of places, both in the Dungeon Master's Guide and in actually mechanical items, which would be a reference to, like, there's a common magic item actually in the table that's like, oh, this points out the nearest Fey crossing, which is, again, an optional feature.
The reason I say this is there's not a single adventure for 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons that has the word Fey crossing in it. Right? This is an unapplicable feature to every module released so far for 5e. Like, there's stuff in the Dungeon Master's Guide saying if you want to run your own game, you can run it. There are magic items that tie into it that don't show up in published adventures.
Anyway,
you know what I'm saying?
That's a fair argument. And maybe there's a way to reconcile that. I think it's very cool.
Well, I think it is. And I think what you could probably just do, frankly, is as cool as the Winter Queen's Refuge and Summer Queen's Invitation is, you could just call this, Twilight Vigil or Twilight Respite or whatever, and just put both of these things on there as just one thing. Because I think splitting them up is just, it is confusing with what you're doing here.
Yeah, that was one of the questions I had about that thing, because I intentionally didn't bind it to the thing. I tried to make it clear that it was separate from this, but I also liked the parallel. I'm glad to know that that's necessary. Yeah. Anyway, the biggest culprit of what I'm talking about comes from Fey Communion, which is the capstone here, which lets you cast one of your spells, one of your Fey Spirit spells, and essentially get an extra concentration to cast it.
That's sick.
Yes. It's very cool. The idea is you summon Fey Spirits around you, and they concentrate on either one of your Seelie spells or your Unseelie spells, depending on which one you're using. But that's just something that you could do, I feel like, for literally any sorcerer, and just say, like, you summon your draconic power to concentrate on this spell. Or
you think this doesn't scream Seelie and Unseelie?
There's nothing about this mechanic that is unique to the flavor of the Feywild.
And this is another, and I think this is another one of our kind of design insight points. Sometimes you just make effect, like a feature like this. This is just a good feature. It's cool, it's powerful, it would make this subclass unique, but it doesn't support the flavor. It is good design, but the design isn't a backbone to the flavor you're going for. Right?
Yep, exactly.
And I think that's okay. Sometimes that's just how it is.
Yeah, there are times where it's okay, but I'll say this again, this is what's held me back on, calling this subclass done is specifically, it's this fake communion feature is one of the biggest things, and obviously the quirks need work. But yeah, it feels bad to me when you can't find a way to do something unique that incorporates the flavor. Like, for a while I was thinking about something tying in emotion, because that's an important part of the Fae thing, and then I didn't want to step on Dark Delirium toes by doing some kind of fear or charm thing. So this is just,
Yeah. AP, take this as an idea, right? What if this was, instead of, what if you split this in two? What if you continued going your Seelie and Unseelie direction, and they were Wrath of the Winter Queen, right? And something of the Summer Queen, or whatever, right? Trickery of the Summer Queen, right? And you could play it, take it in that kind of different direction to a degree, but still play off the same kind of concept. Like, that probably doesn't make a ton of sense.
Yeah, I definitely considered that. Like I said, I was thinking about doing something with emotions and having like a positive and negative emotion thing. But yeah, I know that's a direction. Anyway, I guess this is my design. This is my design insight, which is sometimes you just have to like throw a feature on something, and it, from my perspective at least, it works, but also it kind of feels bad. And so when I finished looking at this and I finished,
not everything you want it to be.
Yeah, it functions as a subclass. I think as it stands, would you agree this functions as a subclass?
I do think that 10th level, sixth level feature here needs to be changed, but that's irrelevant.
Yeah, but I'm just not crazy about the way that fell out. So you just can't. Sometimes, and what it comes down to for me is I think that it's the core of this whole thing is built up on this duality between the two subclasses, this back and forth. And I actually just think, all said and done, from a flavor perspective, it's just a little bit too much. I think it's just too much to jam into one subclass. And
that's... Go ahead. I hate to keep interrupting.
No problem. Go ahead and tell me what you're going to say.
Well, because that's exactly what Frosty Pirate's saying, right? It feels to me like this could be better as two subclasses that come as a pair rather than one with two inside of it, maybe? I don't think there's space in the game for two phase-focused subclass, sorcerer
subclasses.
I think you hit an issue with space. So I think if you're going to do these and you want to do it in this regard, you got to just do it all at once. And I think the strat beat is just, you need to just take the 6th level feature and merge it into one feature that is that is a tie between the two. And that way you're going, 1st level split, 6th level cohesive, 14th level split, 18th level cohesive, right? If you're leapfrogging between the two, I think that works. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe that's the way to go. Because also that was actually the original form that this was at. That was actually where it was at during the 1 hour homebrew is where I ended up on that. But the thing, I didn't want to create this switch back and forth thing and then underutilize it, since it is such a unique mechanic. There's definitely nothing like this.
Yeah.
So I guess the design insight I would take away is, I feel like I'm just kind of trying to force this, and it's important to recognize, the limitations of a thing and not try and make things work that, just sometimes they just can't really pan out. And
don't force a concept if it doesn't fit with your. Don't force a design criteria if it doesn't fit with your concepts.
This isn't again, like terrible design. I don't think. I'll toss this in the. I'll toss this in the workshop, and anyone who wants to take a crack at some of this, I think I'll open up to it. But as far as I'm concerned, I think I'm a little done with this one. Because
I would also be interested in taking a swing at this, frankly.
Yeah,
I love what you've done with it so far. This is so cool to me.
Well, I'm glad that you like it, because I definitely finished up. I've gotten to a point. I guess maybe I've also looked at it a lot, so it's starting to just kind of seem a little bland to me. But
I really love it.
But yeah, that's all I have on this.
Yeah, so that was our design rambling. Hopefully you guys could pull something useful out of that. I know it's helpful for us just to talk through that kind of stuff.
For sure it is.
And yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for being part of the show and for also chatting along with us. It's always good to get your thoughts as well. You know, Pete and I, we know what we're doing for the most part, but as this shows, we hit walls and we get confused, and sometimes we do things that we think are great but they suck, and it takes you guys to tell us that, to know, hey, this idea that you got totally absorbed with, you need to take a step back, or to just tell us it's all awesome. We love that too.
Actually, you know what, strike everything else Jeremy said. Give us love and praise only. Just like I would like to give all of you love and praise now. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us tonight.